Since the ashes of World War II, Japan and the United States built an alliance as strong as steel. But what happens when the foundation of that partnership, a shared financial trust, starts to crack? In a historic twist, Japan and China, the two largest foreign holders of US Treasury securities, are selling off US debt at record-breaking speeds. Over the past 3 months alone, Japan has offloaded $61 billion, while China has dumped a staggering $51.3 billion, 44% of its holdings since 2013. But why now? And what does this mean for America's economy, especially with Donald Trump back in office? In today's video, we'll break down these shocking changes. Can the US dollar stay on top? Will Trump's policies make things worse? And how could this reshape the world's economy? Stick around as we explore what this could mean for all of us. The beginnings of Japan's foreign relations. For over 200 years, Japan followed a strict isolation policy called sakoku during this time. Foreigners were mostly kept out, and Japanese citizens were not allowed to leave. The goal was to protect Japan's society, limit outside influence, and keep political control under the Tokugawa shogunate. Everything changed in 1853 when Commodore Matthew C. Perry from the US Navy arrived in Edo Bay, now Tokyo Bay, with steam-powered ships, known as the Black Ships. These modern vessels and their advanced weapons shocked Japan. Perry's mission was to open Japan to trade, secure fueling stations for American ships, and expand trade routes across the Pacific. The pressure from Perry led to the Treaty of Kanagawa in 1854, ending Japan's isolation. This treaty opened 2 ports, Shimoda and Hakodate, to American ships and paved the way for other agreements with Western countries. These unequal treaties gave foreigners special rights and set unfair trade rules, causing unrest within Japan. Although many Japanese leaders saw these changes as a loss of power, they became the spark for Japan's transformation. Inspired by Western advancements, Japan modernized quickly during the Meiji Restoration in 1868, marking the start of a new era of growth and development. After Japan opened up to the outside world, the government sent several missions to Europe and the United States to learn from their advancements. Japan looked closely at how these countries organized their industries, education systems, military, and governments. American models for education, legal systems, and industrial methods had a huge impact on the Meiji government's plan to build a modern nation. Over time, Japan focused on strengthening its economy, building railways, and modernizing its army and navy with help from the West. They also embraced a new system of constitutional government to guide their development. By the late 1800s and early 1900s, Japan and the United States had a good relationship. Japan accepted America's expansions in places like Hawaii and the Philippines, while the US recognized Japan's interest in Korea. Even though both countries had their own goals, they managed to avoid conflict. Their cooperation grew during World War I when Japan joined the Allies and took control of German territories in the Pacific. This helped Japan become more powerful and led to stronger diplomatic and economic ties with the US. World War II and the aftermath of occupation. As the 20th century wore on, tensions intensified. Japan's imperial expansion into Korea, Manchuria, and further into China and Southeast Asia conflicted with American trade and security interests. Responding to Japanese aggression, the United States imposed escalating economic sanctions, cutting off critical supplies such as oil and steel. These sanctions threatened Japan's resource-dependent empire, pushing Tokyo toward a risky gamble. The surprise attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. The attack prompted the US to declare war and fully commit to the Allied effort in World War II. After years of brutal conflict, Japan surrendered on September 2, 1945, following the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, under the leadership of General Douglas MacArthur, the supreme commander for the Allied powers. The US directed the post-war occupation of Japan from 1945 to 1952. The American-led administration implemented sweeping reforms, A new constitution in 1947 reduced the emperor's role to a symbolic figurehead, guaranteed basic human rights, and outlawed war through Article 9. Land reforms redistributed property, diminishing the influence of wealthy landlords. The powerful zaibatsu industrial conglomerates were broken up to encourage competition, while new labor rights empowered workers. Educational reforms introduced American-style schooling and promoted democratic values. These transformative changes not only democratized Japan, but also laid the groundwork for stable political institutions and set the stage for the country's future economic miracle. Post-war partnership and economic expansion. The 1951 Treaty of San Francisco formally ended the Allied occupation and restored Japan's sovereignty. Yet, the United States remained closely involved in the nation's security affairs. That same year, the US-Japan Treaty of Mutual Cooperation and Security was signed, allowing American forces to remain stationed in Japan to ensure its defense. By offloading the burden of large-scale defense spending onto its ally, Japan was able to channel resources into rebuilding infrastructure, industries, and its export-driven economy. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, Japan leveraged advanced manufacturing techniques, quality control measures, and a highly educated workforce to achieve unprecedented economic growth. The United States served as a vital export market, fueling Japan's economic ascent into one of the world's leading industrial powerhouses. This synergy, American security assurances combined with Japanese economic dynamism, solidified the US-Japan partnership as a cornerstone of prosperity and stability in the post-war period. Cold War period and strategic cooperation. With the onset of the Cold War, the US-Japan alliance became a key pillar of America's strategic framework in Asia. Positioned near the Soviet Union and China, Japan's role extended beyond economics. It provided logistical support, bases for American forces, and a reliable partner in containing the spread of communism. Japan supported US operations during the Korean War, 1950 to 1953, by supplying materials and services. This not only contributed to the Allied war effort, but also further stimulated Japan's economy. During the Vietnam War in the 1960s and 1970s, Japan's strategic location and its role as a stable supplier of goods and services similarly reinforced America's regional presence. Although occasional frictions emerged over trade imbalances and the US military footprint, the core alliance remained resilient. America's guarantee of Japan's security allowed Tokyo to focus on economic development, while Japan's rapid modernization and openness to American cultural and commercial influence buttressed the broader US strategy in the Pacific. Developments in the 21st century. As the global landscape evolved after the Cold War, the US-Japan alliance adapted to new challenges. With the Soviet Union gone, attention shifted to emerging concerns: North Korea's nuclear and missile programs, the rise of China as a global power, and non-traditional security threats like terrorism and cyber attacks. In response, Japan gradually took on a more assertive security role. By 2015, Tokyo reinterpreted its pacifist constitution to allow for collective self-defense, enabling the Japanese self-defense forces to cooperate more closely with US forces and other regional partners in peacekeeping, maritime security, and humanitarian missions. Today, the alliance goes beyond security. It encompasses technological collaboration in fields like cybersecurity and space exploration, joint research and development, and cooperation to address climate change and pandemics. The US and Japan have also pursued multilateral frameworks, such as the Quad, which includes Australia and India, to strengthen the rules-based order in the Indo-Pacific. This deepened partnership is not merely about defending interests. It aims to uphold shared values of democracy, the rule of law, and free trade, thus shaping a more secure and prosperous future in the region and beyond. Next, we examine China's US Treasury holdings over the years. China's US Treasury assets. From 2000 to 2024, China's holdings of US Treasury securities fluctuated substantially over this period, reflecting shifting economic and geopolitical dynamics in the early 2000s. There was a surge in accumulation as China's trade surplus with the US ballooned. By November 2000, China held about $58.9 billion in these securities, amassing vast foreign exchange reserves. US Treasuries offered safety and liquidity, enabling China to maintain an undervalued yuan, buy US dollars, and funnel capital into US bonds. While treasuries were the mainstay, China also diversified into US government agencies, corporate securities, and equities. By 2013, China's holdings of US Treasuries soared to a record $1.3167 trillion, cementing its position as the top foreign holder of US debt. Immense dollar inflows from trade surpluses supported China's currency policies and managed inflation, pushing its foreign reserves above $3.82 trillion by the year's end. A steady decline, 2014 to 2024. After peaking in 2013, China's US Treasury portfolio gradually shrank. By September 2024, holdings dropped to $731 billion. Diversification became key as China expanded into other currencies and assets to reduce over-reliance on US debt. Sino-American trade and tech disputes, along with Beijing's focus on boosting domestic consumption and reducing economic vulnerabilities, also played a role in driving these reductions. Despite these cutbacks, China remains a top foreign holder of US Treasuries, second only to Japan, which held about $1.15 trillion as of April 2024. Implications of strategic reductions. In the third quarter of 2024, both Japan and China sold a large amount of US Treasuries. Japan sold a record $61.9 billion, and China sold $51.3 billion. These moves happened during a rise in bond market activity before the US presidential election. The actions were influenced by higher yields and concerns about President-elect Trump's policies. A big sell-off could flood the market, raise yields, and increase borrowing costs, which could slow down economic growth. A weaker dollar could help US exports but raise import prices, leading to inflation and market instability. Protectionist trade measures might lead to retaliation, affecting global trade and foreign policy. As we've seen, the relationship between Japan and the United States has changed a lot over the years, from being isolated to working together and respecting each other. These changes have shaped both countries and influenced the world, with the way things are changing globally, especially between the US-China and Japan. The story is far from over. What do you think will happen next for Japan and the US? Will their relationship keep growing, or will new challenges pop up? Let us know what you think in the comments. If you liked this video, make sure to like, subscribe for more content, and share it with others who might find it interesting. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.